I've hit over 86% of my plays over the last 2 months, and in this video I'm going to show you the exact strategy in 2 steps how I was able to do that. So let's get into it. Now if you click this video right off the bat, you're probably not believing that I've hit 86% of the plays that I have made over the last 2 months. But I'm going to prove to you and show you exactly how it's actually possible and where this is a secret within the sports betting industry that nobody believes works. Most people are out there guessing on their 5-10 leg parlays or betting their -110 lines hoping that they can win at least 50% of the time, but they're not realizing that they're losing long term while I'm winning long term. And I'm winning on teams and player props that you would never even think about playing. So let's go ahead and get to step 1 is going to be something that everybody hates in the industry. They absolutely despise. Everybody in the sports betting industry despises this, but it's high odds, okay? Your first step is going to be to identify higher odds, and majority of these are going to be with player props. Now when I say higher odds, yes, I mean odds like this: -300, -400, -500. That's what I'm talking about when I say high odds. Now you guys have been groomed for decades upon decades in sports betting to never play odds that are in this type of bracket, okay? The odds that you like to look at are what? -110, -120, maybe -130, okay? You've been groomed to choose these over this. Now the reason why is actually pretty simple. Because why? You get more of a payout when you're playing these instead of these. But the one key factor that you're actually missing is that the sports books want you to play these type of numbers here, because that's where they make the most money out of you. Why? Because you lose the most betting these type of numbers. Sportsbooks don't want you betting these type of numbers long term, because if you know what you're doing, you can actually turn a profit long term and take money from them rather than always donating to them. But the one mistake that everybody gets when they're looking at this is not every high odd is created equal. So just because a line is -300, 400, or 500 does not mean that's guaranteed to win. What you actually have to do is you have to take these higher odd plays and you have to decipher which ones have the actual highest probability of actually hitting. And when you take those type of plays and you put yourself in a scenario that gives you the best opportunity to win, that's where you create your edge long term. Now this creates an edge long term, where this creates a negative edge long term, where you slowly lose all of your money rather than slowly gain all of your money. And make sure you guys watch to the end, because I'm going to show you exactly and prove to you how this actually works with actual plays that I've put in my. Now let's get to step 2. Step 2 is going to be finding those plays, right? We have to find the plays that fit that bracket that I just mentioned, where, like I said, not every single odd that is a high odd is created equal. There are some within that give you a greater probability of hitting than others. Well, it's our job to find those. But how do we find them? Now this is going to differ between each sport and each player prop, but it all comes back to the same exact concept. And the same concept means implied probability versus true probability. Now for example, let's use an NBA play here. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about Kevin Durant. This is a favorite player prop that nobody likes to play, because he's publicly went out and said, don't play any prop that has to do with me. So we're going to use him as an example. All right, let's say Durant, let's just say his points. Let's say for him to score at least 20 plus points, let's say his implied probability is 70% for him to achieve that. Now let's go and look at his true probability, but how do we find his true probability? So there's 2 steps to finding that true probability within this prop right here, where you would have to look at what his overall rate is on the entire season of how many times he was able to surpass this. Then after you do that, you're going to come up with a percentage. Then you write that percentage down. The next step is going to be, how does he play in the environment that he's playing in that game that you're looking at him, which means similar defenses, which means the similar environment that he's in, okay? Because most of the time, and this happens most of the time, where the environment that they're in, they play better. Because what you're looking for is, let's say Kevin Durant was playing against a team that doesn't guard that position pretty good, okay? And they give up a decent amount of points to that position. So what you're looking for is that matchup, and then the true probability that lies within that is the overall percentage combined with the environmental percentage. Like in that environment against that team, how does he perform against similar situations? You take those 2 percentages and it's easy. You get the average of those. So let's say, for example, his true probability, and this is the true probability, like I just told you, his true probability, let's say, is 85%. Now, if you find that, guess what? We just created a gap of 15%. We have an edge of 15% in this matchup. Now, remember when I said all plays that are higher odds are not created equal? Because this circumstance right here might not be the same for another player with the same exact odds as here. It might be the complete opposite. The true probability for another player could be 55% to get 20 plus, but the implied probability is 70%, which would give you a negative edge of 15%. Now, a negative edge long term is going to slowly drain your bankroll. And I'm going to show you an example, a real life example, using casino games to show you exactly how this works long term and why so many people that go to a casino always lose long term compared to a sports bettor that actually has an edge, that plays the new way of sports betting. I like to call it the new way of sports betting because everybody, and I mean everybody in the entire industry for decades, has been doing it completely wrong. And I know this because all of anybody's track record that's out there has nothing compared to what my track record has been since I started sports betting and betting the new way. So what I want to show an example of here, we're going to pull up casino game, all right? And we're going to use the closest one possible to actually giving you an edge in the casino. So we're going to use blackjack as an example. So the house edge on blackjack is 2% most of the time, okay? Could be more. We're going to use 2% as the example. 2%, meaning that's negative 2%. So what does that transition mean? The longer you sit at a table and you play blackjack, your minus 2% edge compounds. So you slowly, if you stay there for 10 hours, you are slowly going to drain your bankroll completely out to where you have nothing left. That's why casinos like to keep the people at the tables, because they know the longer you sit at that table, the longer this comes into play and you slowly start losing your money. Now the same concept happens with sports bettors that play minus 110 lines, okay? Most of the time their edge is negative 5%. So meaning when you're playing these type of plays, yes, you feel like it's 50-50. It's really not. Your edge is negative and you're slowly draining your bankroll. The longer you sit there and the more plays that you play at a negative percent, what are you doing? You're draining your bankroll. Now for the new way of sports betting that I'm teaching you and showing you, what we're doing here is we're taking this, see this negative edge that we have, and we're transforming that negative edge into a positive edge. Okay, so let's go ahead and put new sports betting here. All right, let's say average odds, let's just put up minus 300 there. Okay, how you're creating that edge is just like I showed you previously, where that play had a plus 15% edge. Okay, if you stuck to plays that were within 5 to 15% edge consistently over time, guess what? You've created yourself, let's just say on average, a 10% edge that's going to compound over time. So the longer you sit at this table right here, guess what happens? Your bankroll starts to go from here and it starts to go up. The complete opposite of what happens playing a casino game, where the longer you stay at that table, your money goes down. Doing it this way with sports betting, you're slowly going up. You start to make that climb and you climb up steadily. Okay? Now, the people that win in blackjack are what? Somebody that sits down at the table, plays maybe 5 hands, wins their money and walks away because they got their money and they left. That's the people that make that money. But when you're trying to look for a longer term investment, you can't here. This is not a long-term investment. A long-term investment is making small amounts of money and they gain over time, which I'm going to show you guys another example of how this correlates and how this works and why so many people are against it in the sports betting industry. Now these 3 letters right here are going to change the complete way that you look at sports betting forever, okay? And they are ROI, okay? That stands for return on investment. These 3 letters right here will change the way that you look at sports betting forever. Now, if you invest in the stock market, you invest in stocks or any of that stuff, you know that long term in the stock market, your ROI, okay, long term, that's been proven is at least 10% a year, okay? So what does that mean? Going back to our other example, you have a plus 10% edge in the stock market over the course of a year, year to year, okay? So that, what happens? You put your money in there, it slowly compounds at 10% each year. Now, the biggest mistake that sports bettors make when they're trying to take this key concept and adapt it to sports betting is the money, okay? The money factor. Because let's break down the different types of bankrolls with an ROI of 10%. Let's start out with the most common one in sports betting, which is $1,000. 10% on $1,000 is $100, okay? So if somebody took $1,000 and invested it in the stock market, within a year, they would have made $100. What does that do? Absolutely nothing, right? Does absolutely nothing for you. And that right there is the mindset that needs to be broken, because you think this is nothing, but that's actually 10% ROI on your money, which is great. Getting 10%, like I said, is on par with what the stock market could literally produce. Now, the crazy thing with this is I actually reach this type of number in sports betting monthly. I'm able to reach 10% ROI monthly. So just think about how that compounds monthly when you're able to do this the correct way. Now let's start going up in the bankrolls here. Let's go to 10,000 is going to equal $1,000. So over the course of the year, you make $1,000. Still, most people's mindsets are going to be like, that was nothing. Like, I waited a whole entire year to make $1,000. That's absolutely nothing. But again, that mindset has to be broken, because this right here, thinking that this is nothing, is a broke mindset. It's broke mindset. Because what most people would rather do in this situation is they would rather, with $1,000 bankroll, take $100. They would take that, go put it on an ill-advised bet that's 50-50, and then lose. And then they would lose their money. They would completely lose it, rather than using it as an investment and actually making money and a return on investment. They'll just lose. And then, like I said, slowly throughout the whole entire year of doing that, most won't even last the entire year. I'm going to say within a month or two, they'll drain their accounts and they'll have no money left to invest whatsoever. Why? Because they didn't understand these three letters: return on investment. So the key takeaway from what I'm speaking about right now is not about the amount of money, because the amount of money doesn't matter. The ROI is what actually matters. The return on your investment. The smaller amount of money that you have, the smaller your return on investment is going to be. The bigger amount of money you have, the bigger it's going to be. That's just basic. But the key point is getting through the mindset of understanding how that actually works and how you can actually make money long term, as long as you understand how ROI works and adapt that into your sports betting. Now, I teach people exactly how to do this and how to actually profit month in and month out every single month. If you want to be a part of that crew and you actually want to make money in sports betting long term and flip the house edge in your favor, make sure you click the link in the description. Now I'm going to sit and prove to you exactly how this works. So let's go ahead and jump into the laptop so I can show you guys my official tracker, where I track every single bet day in and day out, so you can see exactly how this actually works long term. So the first thing I want to focus on here is, like I said, the ROI. So if you take a look at the ROI here, look, this is from February 1st to February 28th. 11.2% ROI. It shows you right there what I just told you. Okay, I reached that 10% plateau that literally the stock market produces in a year. I reached that in that month. And how did I do that? Look at the average odds. These are odds that people will run away from. They will not play. They decide, oh, I'm not going to be able to make money doing that long term. But look what happens when you hit over 86%. I could say over 86% because it's 86.5. I went 32 and 5. Okay? And when you roll through that list, let's go ahead and pull up bet history and roll through that list. Okay? Let's go to February and show you exactly how this works. Let's start from February 1st here, where I actually lost the first play that I put in here. Okay? So I was down $1,000 first day in February. But what happens? I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row here, and I accumulate way more than what I lost. But then what happens again? I take a loss at even more money. But what happens after that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 plays in a row that I win. And look at the profit margin on these. You're not getting too much, right? It's not 50-50 money. It's not happening. You're getting small gains, but look at the small gains. They add up over time and recoup any losses that end up happening. And that's where you gain your money. You gain your money on the streaks. Yeah, you're going to lose. That's just the way it's going to go. Okay, you will take losses and you will incur losses, but long term, your little money starts adding up, and it starts adding up quicker and quicker the more streaks that you create. Now that's February. Now let's go ahead and go back and let's take a look at March. So far into March, ROI 16.4%, win-loss 86.4%, 19-3, average odds minus 366. So what happens there? The same exact thing that I just showed you in February. Same exact thing here. Let's start March 1st. You start getting your small gains and you add them up, get a couple of losses along the road, but then you start streaking them together, and those completely add up and surpass any losses. And guess what? You end up being profitable, and you switch the edge. The house edge comes in your favor rather than you being the person that continuously donates. You become the person that consumes and actually makes money rather than donating. And this sports betting strategy that I'm teaching you right here, right now, this is the strategy that literally everybody thinks doesn't work. But I just proved to you right here how that actually works long term. There's no doubting the system that I show you. It works as long as you stay consistent and you understand the concept of investing rather than gambling. Because what I showed you right there is not gambling. That's investing, because we know what our percentage is that we're going to win. We're not just hoping something happens, because hope doesn't create money. Knowing what's going to happen is what creates money. High probability is what creates money. Every other sports bettor that you look at that gives plays, that gives picks, they're just guessing. They have no probability, they have no edge, because they can't prove it to you long term. What I just showed you is the new way to bet on sports and to actually make a living and to actually turn a profit doing it. There is no other way. Now the question that remains is, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep guessing? Are you going to keep hoping that you make money? Are you going to learn a strategy that actually works and actually turns a profit long term? I'm Frank with Linemaker Sports. I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, I'm out.